The burden of silence. Lily had always been the kind of person who was there for everyone. She had a listening ear, a comforting word, and the ability to make others feel like they mattered. Whether it was her friends confiding in her or colleagues seeking advice, Lily was always the one to listen, always the one to help. But now, sitting alone in her small, dimly lit apartment, she felt more isolated than ever before. The silence around her was deafening. It was the kind of silence that pressed against her chest, a weight she couldn't escape. She had always been the strong one, the one everyone could rely on. But now, with no one around to listen to her, she felt lost. There was no one to turn to, no one to hear her. The thought of reaching out to someone for help seemed foreign. For years, she had taken on the burden of others' struggles, but now that she was drowning in her own, she didn't know how to ask for help. Lily's life had always been busy. She thrived on the hustle, on the feeling of being needed, but the constant demands from work, her friendships, and her family had taken their toll. Now she couldn't remember the last time she felt truly at peace, truly understood. She had buried her emotions under layers of responsibility, always putting others first and never giving herself the chance to process her own feelings. And now, in the silence of her apartment, it all came crashing down on her. Her thoughts were a chaotic swirl. She was overwhelmed, stressed, and more than anything, she was lonely. The weight of her own thoughts was becoming unbearable, but she didn't know how to let it out. She felt trapped inside her own mind, unable to escape the constant cycle of anxiety and doubt. The walls of her apartment, once a safe space, now felt like a prison. She had always been a strong, independent woman, but now that very strength seemed like a facade. She realized for the first time how much she had neglected herself, how much she had allowed others to take from her without ever asking for anything in return. She had always been the listener, but now she had no one to hear her. Lily thought about calling her best friend Rachel. She had always been able to talk to Rachel about anything, but today she didn't want to burden her. Rachel had her own life, her own problems, and Lily couldn't bring herself to ask for help. The thought of being vulnerable, of admitting she couldn't handle everything on her own, filled her with dread. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was a sound so sudden, so unexpected that for a moment, Lily didn't know what to do. She got up and walked cautiously to the door, unsure of who could be on the other side. When she opened it, she was surprised to see a man standing there, a stranger with a warm smile on his face. "Hi," he said, his voice kind and welcoming. "I'm Marcus. I just moved in next door. I thought I'd come over and introduce myself." Lily blinked, caught off guard. She hadn't been expecting company, but something about his presence made her feel oddly comforted. She wasn't sure why, but she felt a sense of calm wash over her. It wasn't the usual feeling of being overwhelmed by an unexpected visitor. This time it felt like a small break in the suffocating silence. "Oh, hi," Lily responded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Lily. Nice to meet you." They stood there for a moment, awkwardly, as if neither of them quite knew how to start a conversation. But then Marcus spoke again, his tone gentle. "I know this might sound a little strange, but I've been living here for a couple of weeks now, and I've noticed you've been by yourself a lot. I just wanted to say that if you ever need anything or if you just want to talk, I'm here." Lily was taken aback. She hadn't expected him to say that. She wasn't used to strangers being so open, so kind. She hadn't even realized how much she needed someone to simply listen. The words hit her harder than she expected, and for a moment she felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I appreciate that." Marcus smiled warmly, sensing her vulnerability. "No problem, I'll leave you to it, but just know that I'm here if you need anything." As he turned to leave, Lily felt something stir inside her. A sense of relief, a small flicker of hope. She didn't have to carry the burden of silence alone. It was a simple offer, but it meant everything to her. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone had acknowledged her, seen her, and offered their presence without judgment. The unexpected listener, Lily had barely slept that night. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of questions and possibilities. Could she really open up to someone? Could she let down her guard and share the parts of herself she had kept hidden for so long? She wasn't sure, but the thought of it lingered in her mind, almost as if something inside her was nudging her forward, urging her to take the next step. The next day, she found herself at a local cafe during her lunch break, trying to clear her brain and gather her thoughts. The familiar hum of conversation, the sound of coffee machines whirring, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. It was comforting in a way. Lily ordered her usual drink and found a quiet corner by the window. She didn't expect to see anyone she knew, but as she settled into her seat, a man walked by, catching her attention. He was holding a cup of coffee in one hand, his other hand stuffed into his jacket pocket. His face was familiar, but she couldn't place where she had seen him before. "Excuse me, are you Marcus?" she asked, hesitant at first, unsure if he would remember her. He turned, a surprised but friendly smile appearing on his face. "Lily, right? Wow, it's been ages. How have you been?" Lily felt a wave of relief. She was right. He was Marcus, someone she had briefly met at a work event a few months ago. They had exchanged a few words then, but it wasn't a conversation that had made a lasting impression. Until now, she had no idea why, but seeing him in this moment felt like fate. "I'm doing okay, I guess," Lily said, her voice a little uncertain. "Just, the usual." Marcus chuckled, pulling up a chair. "Yeah, I get that. Mind if I join you? I could use a break." Lily hesitated for a moment, but then, almost without thinking, she nodded. There was something about Marcus that made her feel comfortable, like she could talk to him without fear of judgment. She didn't even realize how much she needed a conversation like this until now. They started talking about mundane things, work, the weather, their favorite coffee spots. But as the conversation flowed, Lily found herself easing into it. She began to talk more about herself, about her struggles and the overwhelming weight of her own thoughts. At first, she didn't even realize what she was doing. It wasn't until she caught herself talking about her recent emotional state, her fears, and her need to be understood that she realized how much she had been bottling up. Marcus, to her surprise, didn't interrupt. He didn't try to offer advice or even sympathy. He simply listened, and it felt different. It felt freeing. It felt like, for the first time in a long while, someone was truly hearing her, not just listening to her words, but listening to the feelings behind them, the unspoken emotions she had never shared with anyone before. "Thank you for listening," Lily said, feeling vulnerable but also lighter. "I didn't expect to say all that, but it felt good to just say it out loud." Marcus smiled warmly. "Sometimes all we really need is someone who's willing to listen. You don't have to carry all that by yourself." Lily felt something shift inside her. She'd been afraid to let her guard down, afraid that if she spoke, it would be too much, too overwhelming for others. But Marcus had proven that sharing wasn't about burdening someone else. It was about finding connection, finding relief, and finding the courage to be vulnerable. Why don't you do this more often? Marcus asked gently. You've got a lot going on, Lily, and I can tell you've been holding it in for far too long. Don't be afraid to talk about it. Lily looked at him, surprised by his words. He was right. She had been holding back, afraid that her struggles would be too much for others to handle. But here, in this moment, she realized that it wasn't about being perfect. It was about being real. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to hide her struggles anymore. I think you're right, she said softly. I've been so focused on keeping it together that I've forgotten what it's like to just let go and let someone else in. Maybe, maybe I'll try more often. Marcus nodded, a small encouraging smile on his face. You don't have to do it alone, Lily. You just need to find the right people to talk to. And remember, sometimes just listening is all it takes to make a difference. Lily smiled for the first time in a while, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in a long time, she realized that she didn't have to carry the weight of her worries alone. There were people out there who would listen, who would help her carry the burden, and that gave her hope. As they finished their coffee, Lily felt a shift inside her. She knew that things weren't going to change overnight, but she had taken the first step. She had shared her heart, and someone had truly listened. That simple act of listening had done more for her than any advice or words ever could. The weight lifted. Lily woke up the next morning, feeling lighter than she had in months. The conversation with Marcus had opened something inside her, something that had been locked away for too long. She had talked openly about her fears, her anxieties, and the struggles she had been carrying by herself. For the first time, she felt like someone truly understood her, not through advice or sympathy, but simply through the act of listening. The weight she had been carrying for so long seemed to have lessened, even if only by a small amount. It wasn't gone, not entirely, but it felt manageable now. She had allowed herself to be vulnerable, to open up to someone else, and that act alone had provided her with a sense of relief. It was a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time, and it made her realize just how much she had been holding back. As the days passed, Lily found herself reflecting on her conversation with Marcus, thinking about how easy it had been to open up to him. She hadn't expected it, but in his presence, she felt safe. He hadn't judged her or tried to fix her problems. He had simply listened, and in doing so, he had given her a space to express herself freely without fear or shame. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she had been withholding from everyone around her. She had always been the one to listen, to offer advice, to be the strong friend, but in doing so, she had ignored her own needs. She had never allowed herself to be vulnerable, not fully. She had convinced herself that if she kept it all in, if she stayed strong for others, she could protect herself. But the truth was, she had been protecting herself from connection, from the very thing she needed the most. One afternoon, as she was walking through the park, she saw a familiar face. It was Rachel, one of her closest friends, sitting on a bench, looking lost in thought. Normally, Lily would have passed by, knowing that Rachel would eventually reach out when she was ready. But today, something inside her shifted. She stopped, her heart urging her to take a different approach. Hey, Rachel, Lily called softly, approaching her friend. Mind if I sit with you? Rachel looked up in surprise, her eyes red as though she had been crying. Lily, hey, I didn't expect to see you here. Lily smiled gently and sat down beside her. I was just walking by and saw you. I thought I'd come say hi. You okay? Rachel shrugged, her shoulders slumped. I don't know, it's just been a tough week. I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore. Lily paused, her mind reflecting back on her own struggles, her own need for someone to listen. She felt the weight of the moment, realizing how much Rachel might be going through, how much she had kept inside. Lily reached over and placed a hand gently on Rachel's arm, offering her the same kindness she had received from Marcus. "You don't have to go through this alone, Rachel," Lily said quietly. "I'm here for you. I know you've always been the one to listen to me, but I want to listen to you now. Whatever you need to say, I'm here." Rachel's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in weeks, she let them fall. "I've just been so overwhelmed lately. My job, my family, everything. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how to get out of it." Lily squeezed her friend's hand, giving her the space to release the pent-up emotions she had been carrying. "It's okay to feel like that. It's okay to be overwhelmed. And it's okay to not have all the answers right now. You don't have to fix everything all at once." Rachel sniffled, wiping her tears, but she managed a small smile. "You always know the right things to say." Lily shook her head. "No, I don't, but I'm here to listen. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes just letting it out is all we need to start feeling lighter." The two sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of Rachel's emotions slowly lifting as she shared more of what had been on her mind. Lily listened intently, offering only quiet encouragement and understanding. She didn't offer solutions or advice. She simply allowed Rachel to express herself. As they talked, Lily realized how much she had been holding back from others. In the past, she had always been the one to offer advice, to fix problems. But now she saw the power of just listening, of being present in someone else's pain without the need to intervene. She understood that sometimes the best gift you can give someone is not an answer, but the space to be heard. When Rachel finished speaking, she looked at Lily, her eyes softer now, her shoulders more relaxed. "Thank you, Lily. I didn't know how much I needed this until just now." Lily smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle within her. "I'm glad I could be here for you. We all need someone to listen to us. I know I've needed it too." In that moment, Lily realized that by listening to Rachel, she had found something profound within herself. She had learned that healing wasn't just about speaking your truth. It was also about creating space for others to speak theirs. It wasn't about fixing everything or offering solutions. It was about the simple, quiet act of listening, of being present for someone and allowing them to share their burden. And in that, Lily found her own healing. She had released the weight she had been carrying, not by speaking, but by listening. And she had opened the door to deeper connections, not just with others, but with herself, the ripple effect of listening. The following days felt different for Lily. She didn't realize it at first, but as she went about her routine, something had subtly shifted within her. She had listened to Rachel, truly listened, and the weight Rachel had been carrying seemed to ease, even if just a little. What was even more surprising to Lily was how much she had gained from it too. By being fully present for her friend, by simply listening, Lily felt a sense of connection she hadn't realized she had been longing for. It was like a ripple effect had started. The act of listening didn't just change Rachel's life in that moment, it had changed Lily's too. She began to understand that true connection wasn't just about speaking your truth or offering solutions. It was about being there for someone in their rawest form. It was about offering a safe space for someone to express themselves without judgment, without fear, and without trying to fix everything. Over the next week, Lily found herself in conversations with others where she began to listen more attentively. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to offer advice right away, and instead she allowed people to speak their truths. With each conversation, she realized how much people appreciated it. It wasn't just about the words, it was about the understanding, the empathy, the presence she was offering. And it was healing both for them and for her. At work, her colleague Ben, who had been dealing with some personal challenges, approached her one afternoon during a break. Normally, she would have offered him a quick solution or an empathetic nod and moved on. But something inside her told her to pause and really listen this time. "Lily, can I talk to you for a minute?" Ben asked, his voice filled with hesitation. "Of course, Ben," Lily replied, setting her coffee cup down and giving him her full attention. "What's on your mind?" Ben sighed deeply, his face showing the strain of the past few weeks. "I've been struggling with a lot lately. Family stuff, work. It feels like everything is piling up and I can't keep up. I don't know who to turn to. I just feel lost." Lily didn't rush to offer advice. Instead, she simply nodded and listened, her focus entirely on him. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. She just let him speak, letting him unload the weight he had been carrying. "I don't even know what to do anymore," Ben continued, his voice breaking slightly. "It feels like everything I try only makes things worse." Lily felt the depth of his pain. She understood that he wasn't asking for answers. He just needed to be heard. "I hear you, Ben," she said quietly, "and I'm really glad you're sharing this with me. Sometimes just talking it out is a huge step. You don't have to have it all figured out right away." Ben looked at her, surprised. He had expected advice, or at least some kind of solution. But what he received was the simple gift of being heard. For a moment, he didn't feel so alone in his struggle. "I mean, my only struggles, I think I don't know why I didn't come to you sooner," Ben said, his eyes softening. This, it feels better just saying it out loud." Lily smiled gently. "Sometimes we just need someone to listen, Ben. You're not alone in this." As Ben returned to his work, Lily sat there for a moment, reflecting on the exchange. It wasn't the first time she had heard someone's struggles, but it was the first time she had truly listened without thinking of how to fix it. There was a beauty in that, in simply being present for someone, and it was starting to show her how deeply human connection ran. It wasn't long before Lily realized that the act of listening had begun to affect the way people interacted with her. At dinner with her family, she noticed that her parents seemed more open, more willing to share their own thoughts with her. At work, her colleagues began to confide in her, not because she offered solutions, but because they knew she would listen, truly listen. Even Sarah, her old friend who had been distant for so long, had reached out. The message was simple, but its impact was profound. "I've been thinking about you. Can we meet up? I'd love to catch up and hear what's been going on in your life." Lily smiled as she read the message. She knew that part of Sarah's reaching out was because of the way Lily had changed, how she had embraced vulnerability, how she had shown that listening wasn't just about hearing the words, but understanding the emotions behind them. She had learned to offer space for others to express themselves, and that was what made the difference. The more Lily reflected on the ripple effect, the more she understood how powerful it was. Listening wasn't just a passive act, it was an active way of connecting, of giving someone the gift of being seen, heard, and understood. It wasn't about offering solutions, but about creating a space where people could be real, where they didn't have to pretend to be okay when they weren't. In her quiet moments, Lily realized that this was the beginning of something much bigger than she had anticipated. It wasn't just about helping others, It was about helping herself. She had learned to listen, not just to others, but to her own heart. She had learned that being vulnerable, being real was a strength, not a weakness. And as she walked this path, she felt more connected to herself and to the people around her than ever before. Breaking the cycle of silence. Lily woke up the next morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The conversations she had with others in the past week had left her feeling lighter, more connected. She had truly listened, and in return, she had learned the profound power that came with that simple act. But there was still something inside her, a quiet voice urging her to keep going, to keep breaking down the walls she had built around herself. The more she listened, the more she realized how much she had been holding back for years. She had spent so much of her life suppressing her own needs, her own desires, in favor of being the one who always had the answers. She had been the strong one, the listener, the person everyone relied on. But now she understood that it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't healthy. She couldn't continue living this way without ever being heard, without ever being vulnerable. Lily spent the morning reflecting on the changes that had taken place in her life. The first step was breaking the cycle of silence. It wasn't just about listening to others, it was about allowing herself to be heard, to speak her truth, and to create space for herself in the world. She couldn't keep burying her own needs just to keep the peace or to make others feel comfortable. She had to step into her own truth, her own voice. Later that day, Lily met up with Emma, her best friend. It had been a while since they had caught up, and Lily knew this was the perfect opportunity to practice what she had learned. She had been avoiding deeper conversations with Emma, afraid of the vulnerability that would come with opening up. But she knew it was time to change that. "Hey, Emma," Lily greeted her as they sat down at their favorite cafe. "It's been too long. How have you been?" Emma smiled warmly, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. "I'm good, but I've been worried about you, Lily. You've been a little distant lately. What's going on?" Lily felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. She had avoided this moment for so long, afraid of what would happen if she let Emma in. But something inside her told her that now was the time. She needed to stop hiding, stop pretending everything was fine. She needed to let someone in, someone who had always been there for her. "I've been going through a lot, Emma," Lily began, her voice shaking slightly. "I've been holding so much inside, afraid to talk about it. I've been so focused on being the strong one, the one who always listens and gives advice, that I've forgotten how to just be real, to ask for help. I've been afraid to share how I'm feeling." Emma's eyes softened as she reached out to touch Lilia's hand. "Lily, you don't have to carry all of that by yourself. I've been your friend for so long, and I've always been here for you. You don't have to keep everything inside." Lily swallowed hard, the lump in her throat threatening to choke her. "I know, I didn't want to burden anyone with my stuff. I didn't want to seem weak or needy." Emma shook her head, her expression full of empathy. "Lily, sharing isn't a weakness, it's a strength. You don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to have all the answers. You're allowed to be vulnerable." Lily felt a tear slip down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable, to let someone see her pain. She had spent so much time hiding her true self from the world, but now she realized that sharing her feelings didn't make her weak. It made her human. "Thank you, Emma," Lily whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for listening, for just being here. I've been so afraid of letting anyone in. But now I see that it's not about being perfect. It's about being real. Emma smiled warmly, squeezing Lily's hand. You don't have to thank me, Lily. I'm your friend, and I'm here for you no matter what. We all go through tough times, and we all need someone to listen. You're never alone in this. The weight that had been hanging over Lily for so long felt a little lighter as she sat there with Emma. For the first time in months, she felt like she was being truly seen, truly heard. She didn't have to hide behind a mask anymore. She didn't have to carry the burden of silence alone. And in that moment, Lily realized something important. She had spent so much of her life trying to be the strong one, trying to fix things for others, that she had forgotten how to ask for help, how to open up, how to let others in. But the simple act of listening, both giving and receiving, had changed everything. It had allowed her to break the cycle of silence, to embrace vulnerability, and to connect with others in a way that felt real and authentic. The conversations she had started to have weren't just about offering advice or solutions. They were about creating space for honesty, for vulnerability, and for healing. It was about sharing the weight of life's challenges, not just with the people around her, but with herself. Lily knew the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be moments of fear and doubt. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face them. She had broken the cycle of silence, and now she could move forward with a new understanding of herself and her relationships. The healing power of connection. As the weeks passed, Lily began to notice subtle but profound changes in her life. She felt lighter, not because her problems had disappeared, but because she had finally allowed herself to share them with others. She had let go of the weight of isolation, and in doing so, she had discovered the incredible healing power of connection. It wasn't a magic fix, no. The challenges in her life were still there, but now they didn't feel as insurmountable. The act of sharing, of being heard, had brought a sense of peace to her that she hadn't known she was missing. Her conversations with Emma, with Marcus, and even with Ben had not only helped them process their own pain, but had also allowed Lily to see herself more clearly. She was no longer just the listener, the strong one who carried everyone's burdens without asking for anything in return. She was learning to be open, to allow herself the space to be vulnerable, and in doing so, she felt a sense of healing that she hadn't realized she was searching for. One evening, after a long day of work, Lily decided to take a walk to clear her mind. The evening air was cool, and the city was quiet, with only the occasional sound of footsteps echoing in the empty streets. As she walked, her thoughts drifted back to her recent conversation with Rachel. Rachel had opened up to her in a way she hadn't in years, and Lily had listened with a depth of empathy she hadn't known she was capable of. In return, Rachel had listened to Lily's own struggles, something she hadn't realized she needed so badly. Lily's heart swelled as she thought about the power of those conversations. The simple act of listening to each other had created a space for healing, not just for the people she had helped, but for herself too. It was as if by allowing others to speak their truth, she had found her own voice, her own sense of peace. When Lily returned home, she felt an overwhelming urge to write. She sat down at her desk, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating the quiet room. She pulled out her journal and began to write, pouring her heart onto the pages. It wasn't just about her own healing, but about everything she had learned in the past few weeks. The power of listening, the importance of vulnerability, and the strength that came from letting people in. The words flowed easily, each sentence a release, a way for Lily to continue breaking free from the silence that had once held her captive. She wrote about her journey, the struggles, the fears, and the triumphs. But most importantly, she wrote about the connections she had made, the people who had shown her what true healing looked like. As she wrote, Lily realized something important. Healing wasn't just about the people she spoke to, but about the relationships she had built. The connections she had nurtured had allowed her to heal, and in turn, those connections had strengthened because of the vulnerability she had shared. She wasn't just healing herself, she was healing the bonds she had with others. The next morning, as Lily sat with her cup of coffee, reading over the pages of her journal, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had learned that healing wasn't a solitary endeavor. It wasn't something you did in isolation. True healing came from connection, from being open to others, from sharing your struggles, and from listening to the struggles of those around you. Lily felt more connected to the people in her life than ever before, but she also felt connected to herself. She had given herself permission to feel, to be vulnerable, and in doing so, she had begun the process of healing that she had been avoiding for so long. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Hey, Lily, I just wanted to thank you again for everything you said the other day. I've been thinking a lot, and I feel like a weight has been lifted. You really helped me, and I can't tell you how much it means." Lily smiled as she read the message. It was a simple thing, but it meant the world to her. She had given Rachel the gift of being heard, and now Rachel had given her the gift of knowing that her vulnerability had made a difference. That was the power of connection, the way it could heal both the speaker and the listener. Later that week, Lily met up with Marcus again. They hadn't seen each other for a while, and she was eager to share how much their conversation had meant to her. When she found him at the same cafe where they had first met, she walked up to him with a smile on her face. "Hey, Marcus," she greeted him. "I've been meaning to thank you." He raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Thank me? For what?" "For listening," Lily said, her voice filled with warmth. "I didn't realize how much I needed to talk until you let me. I've learned so much about myself, about how important it is to be heard. You helped me break out of my silence, and I'll never forget that." Marcus smiled, his eyes kind. "I'm glad I could help, Lily. Sometimes just being there for someone is the most powerful thing you can do." Lily nodded, feeling the truth of his words deep within her. She understood now. Healing was a process, and it wasn't just about what you did alone. It was about the connections you built, the ways you opened up to others, and the power of listening. She had found peace through the simple act of sharing, and in doing so, she had not only healed herself, but also deepened the bonds that held her to the people she loved. The journey of transformation. As the days passed, Lily found herself feeling more at peace with her life than she had in years. She had started to embrace vulnerability, to open herself up to others, and in return, she had discovered a sense of healing she never thought possible. But the process of transformation wasn't linear. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were moments of doubt, moments when Lily questioned whether she was truly changing or just pretending. Yet each time she experienced those doubts, she reminded herself of the progress she had made. She had begun to understand that transformation wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about erasing the pain, but about learning to live with it and grow despite it. It was about accepting that there would always be ups and downs, but that with each challenge, there was an opportunity to learn and evolve. Lily had been meeting up with Rachel more often now, and their conversations had become a safe space where both of them could express themselves honestly. Rachel had become one of the people Lily trusted most, and their bond had deepened in ways Lily hadn't anticipated. She no longer felt the need to be the perfect friend, the one who always had answers or solutions. She was learning that sometimes just being there was enough. Sometimes simply listening and offering a space to be heard was the most important thing. One evening, after a particularly deep conversation with Rachel, Lily found herself reflecting on how much her life had changed. She was no longer the person she had been months ago, the one who carried the weight of her emotions silently, afraid to let anyone in. She had broken free from that silence, and in doing so, she had experienced a transformation she hadn't known was possible. The next morning, Lily decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She loved walking through the park near her apartment. It was a place where she could reflect, breathe, and simply be. As she walked, she saw a familiar face. Ben, her colleague from work, sitting on a bench, looking lost in thought. She had seen him around the office lately, but today there was something different about him. He seemed distant, preoccupied. Lily approached him slowly, unsure if he wanted company, but something inside her told her to reach out. "Hey, Ben," she greeted him gently, sitting down beside him. "Mind if I join you for a minute?" Ben looked up, surprised to see her, but there was a hint of relief in his eyes. "Lily, hey, sure, sit down. I didn't expect anyone to be here." Lily smiled softly. "I just wanted to check in. I know things have been tough for you lately. You've seemed a little off. Want to talk about it?" For a moment, Ben hesitated. He had always been the quiet, stoic type. But something about Lily's gentle presence, the way she listened without judgment, made him feel safe enough to open up. "I've been struggling, Lily," he admitted, his voice quieter than usual. "I've been putting on a brave face, but it's been hard. I'm dealing with some personal stuff, and I don't really know how to talk about it. I feel like I'm drowning, but I don't know how to ask for help." Lily nodded, her heart going out to him. She understood the feeling all too well. The weight of silence, the burden of keeping things to yourself, of being afraid to let anyone in. She had lived that way for years. "I get it, Ben. I've been there. It's tough when you feel like you're carrying everything on your own, but you don't have to do it alone. Sometimes just talking about it even a little bit can help." Ben looked at her, his eyes filled with vulnerability. "I don't know if I've ever really let anyone in. It's hard for me, but I don't know. I guess it feels different with you, Lily. I feel like I can talk about it." Lily smiled softly, offering him the same gift that had been given to her, the power of listening. "I'm here, Ben, whenever you're ready to talk. I won't judge. I just want you to know that you don't have to carry this alone." They sat together in silence for a few moments, the sound of birds chirping in the background, the rustle of leaves in the trees. Lily wasn't rushing him to speak. She wasn't pushing for answers. She was simply present, offering him the space to open up when he was ready. Ben finally broke the silence, his voice quieter now, but filled with a sense of relief. "I think I'm ready to talk. I don't know if it'll fix everything, but I need to start somewhere." Lily smiled warmly, her heart swelling with empathy. "You don't need to fix everything right now, Ben. Just talk. That's all." As Ben began to share his struggles, Lily listened. It wasn't about offering advice or fixing his problems. It was about being there, creating a space where he could be vulnerable without fear. And in that moment, Lily realized something incredibly important. Healing wasn't just about her own transformation. It was about creating the space for others to heal too. By sharing her own journey, by being open and vulnerable, she had given others permission to do the same. A new path forward, the courage to keep growing. The days following her conversation with Ben left Lily with a quiet sense of pride. She had listened, but more than that, she had created space for someone else to be vulnerable, to open up without the fear of being judged. The experience was transformative, not just for Ben, but for Lily as well. She realized that the more she listened, the more she gave, the more she received. The power of connection, of truly being there for someone, had begun to shape her in ways she hadn't expected. It was as though she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one where vulnerability was no longer a weakness, but a strength. She had once thought that being strong meant keeping everything inside, never showing weakness. But now she understood that true strength came from embracing her imperfections, from allowing herself to be seen for who she truly was. As she walked down the street one afternoon on her way to meet Emma for coffee, Lily's mind began to wander. She thought about how much had changed in her life in just a few months. Her conversations with Marcus, Rachel, and Ben had opened her heart to new possibilities. The act of listening had helped her heal, but it had also given her the courage to open up to others, to allow herself to be vulnerable. She was no longer the woman she had been at the beginning of her journey, the one who hid behind a mask of perfection, afraid to let anyone see the cracks beneath the surface. She had learned that healing wasn't about fixing yourself. It was about allowing yourself to grow, to evolve, and to accept the messy, imperfect parts of life. When Lily arrived at the cafe, Emma was already waiting for her, a steaming cup of coffee in front of her. "Hey you," Emma greeted with a warm smile. "How's everything going?" Lily sat down across from her heart feeling light. "It's going really well, actually. I've been thinking a lot about the last few weeks, and I've realized something. I've been hiding from myself for so long. I've been so afraid to open up, to be vulnerable because I thought it would make me weak. But now I see it differently." Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Lily smiled, her eyes reflecting the clarity she had gained. "I've been learning that real strength doesn't come from keeping everything inside. It comes from opening up, from being real with others and with myself. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to ask for help. And I finally learned that it's okay to be imperfect." Emma's smile softened, and she reached across the table, giving Lily's hand a gentle squeeze. "I'm so proud of you, Lily. I've seen you grow so much, and I can see how much more at peace you are with yourself. You've always been strong, but now you're strong in a way that's real, that's grounded." Lily's heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you, Emma. I couldn't have done it without you. You've been there for me, supporting me even when I didn't know how to ask for it. And now I'm learning that I don't have to carry everything alone. I'm learning to listen to myself and to others." The two of them sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their coffee. It was moments like these that made Lily realize how far she had come. She had learned that life wasn't about getting everything right. It was about being present, about showing up for the people around you and allowing them to do the same for you. It was about embracing vulnerability and using it as a way to connect with others in a meaningful way. The world outside the cafe was bustling with activity, but for Lily, the chaos felt distant. She felt a deep sense of peace, as though she had finally found her place in the world. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, moments of self-doubt and fear, but she also knew that she had the tools now to face those challenges head on, with an open heart and the courage to keep growing. As they finished their coffee, Emma looked at Lily, her expression thoughtful. "So what's next for you, huh? Where do you go from here?" Lily paused for a moment, considering the question. "I think I want to keep listening, keep being present. I want to keep learning, growing, and embracing the beauty of vulnerability. And most importantly, I want to help others find the courage to do the same." Because I've learned that the more we listen, the more we connect, and the more we connect, the more we heal. Emma nodded, her eyes bright with pride. You're already doing that, Lily. You've come so far, and I know this is just the beginning. Lily smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace settle within her. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now she knew she was on the right path, a path of connection, growth, and the courage to be herself, embracing new beginnings. The next step in the journey. Lily stood by the window of her apartment, watching as the world outside carried on its relentless pace. The city was as busy as ever, but something about the way she saw it now felt different. She wasn't the same woman who had walked these streets weeks ago, overwhelmed by the weight of her own unspoken fears. She wasn't the same woman who had kept her thoughts locked inside, afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to reach out. Now she understood something profound, that every day was a new beginning, a chance to grow, to heal, and to be more authentic. The journey she had been on, the one that started with breaking free from silence and embracing vulnerability, was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. Lily took a deep breath and let the cool air wash over her. There were still moments when she felt insecure, when the doubts crept in, whispering that maybe she wasn't strong enough to keep moving forward. But those moments were fewer now. With each conversation, each new connection, she was discovering a version of herself that she had kept hidden for too long. A version that was not afraid to be seen, not afraid to speak, not afraid to be vulnerable. It had been months since she first met Marcus, and while she still appreciated his kindness in the simple act of being heard, she knew now that the real change had come from within her. She had learned that healing wasn't something someone else could give you. It was something you had to do for yourself, and it was something that was ongoing, a process that required patience, courage, and self-compassion. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Rachel. Hey, are you free this weekend? I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation, and I'd love to catch up more. Lily smiled as she read the message. Rachel had become not only a close friend, but also a reflection of the growth they had both experienced. She had seen Rachel struggle with her own vulnerabilities, but now, like Lily, she was learning the power of connection. They had both come so far, and the idea of reconnecting filled Lily with warmth. She quickly typed back, I'd love that. Let's meet up Saturday. Can't wait to see you. As she set her phone down, Lily's thoughts turned to the future. She had come to realize that while she had gained so much through her conversations, her willingness to listen, and her ability to open up, there was still so much more to explore. There were always new beginnings, new opportunities to grow, and new people to meet. The world was full of stories waiting to be heard, and Lily was ready to be part of them. Not just as the listener, but as someone who could share her own story too. She had learned that the act of listening had a ripple effect, not only on others, but also on herself. Each time she listened to someone's story, she gained new insights into her own life, her own heart. Every conversation had become a stepping stone toward a deeper understanding of herself and the world around her. It was no longer about just offering support or advice. It was about connection, about vulnerability, about truly being present with someone, not just to help, but to experience their journey with them. And now Lily was ready for the next step. She wasn't going to wait for the perfect moment to begin her next chapter. She had learned that there was no perfect moment. There was only now. There was only today. And today she was choosing to embrace her new path, the one that had been carved out by her willingness to listen, to connect, and to be vulnerable. Later that week, Lily met with Emma again. The conversation was different this time. They spoke about their personal growth, about the lessons they had both learned from their own struggles and triumphs. Lily shared her thoughts on the changes she had experienced, and Emma listened with the same warmth and understanding that had always defined their friendship. "You've come such a long way, Lily," Emma said, her voice full of admiration. "I can see it in you. You're not just listening more, you're really living now. You're giving yourself permission to be who you are, and that's the most powerful thing you can do." Lily smiled softly, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I still have a long way to go, Emma, but I feel like I'm finally on the right path. It's not easy, but I know now that I don't have to do it alone. I have people who support me, who see me for who I really am." "You always had that, Lily," Emma said gently, "but you've had to learn to see it yourself. That's the hardest part." Lily nodded. "You're right, and it's a lesson I'm still learning every day." As they finished their coffee and chatted about their plans for the future, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but she was no longer afraid. She had the courage to embrace new beginnings, to walk through life with an open heart, and to continue the journey of transformation. Each day was an opportunity to grow, to connect, and to become more of the person she was meant to be. And for the first time in a long while, Lily felt ready, ready to face whatever came next, with the strength of her vulnerability and the power of listening guiding her forward. The final step, embracing the fullness of life. Lily woke up to the soft light streaming through her bedroom window, casting a warm glow across the room. She felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The past months had been a journey of discovery, growth, and healing. And now, standing at the edge of a new chapter in her life, Lily realized something profound. The journey she had undertaken was not about finding a destination. It was about embracing the fullness of life with all its complexities, vulnerabilities, and connections. As she sat by her window sipping her morning coffee, she reflected on how far she had come. There were times when she had felt lost, unsure, and overwhelmed. She had been consumed by the fear of being vulnerable, of letting others in, of exposing her weaknesses. But now she understood that true strength came not from hiding her flaws, but from embracing them. It came from being open, honest, and real, not just with others, but with herself. The simple act of listening had changed everything for her. It had allowed her to break free from the silence that had weighed her down for so long. She had learned that by truly listening to others, to herself, and to the world around her, she had gained a deeper understanding of what it meant to be human. She had learned that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a powerful tool for connection and growth. But it wasn't just about listening. It was about the conversations that followed, the conversations where she shared her truth, where she opened up and allowed herself to be seen. She had learned to speak her truth without fear, without shame, and in doing so, she had created space for others to do the same. It was a cycle of healing, a cycle that started with one simple act, the act of being present, being real, and being vulnerable. As she prepared for her day, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. There was still so much more to experience, so many more connections to make, so many more stories to share. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid to step into the unknown, to embrace whatever came next, because she knew that she had the strength to face it. not because she had all the answers, but because she was willing to learn, to grow, and to be open to whatever life had to offer. Later that day, as Lily met up with Marcus for a casual lunch, she couldn't help but smile. Their friendship had become one of the most important relationships in her life. Marcus had shown her the power of listening and had become a constant reminder of how transformative that simple act could be. "You've come a long way, haven't you?" Marcus asked, his eyes warm with appreciation. "I remember when we first met. You were so closed off, so afraid to let anyone in." Lily chuckled, shaking her head. "I wasn't I? I've learned so much since then. I used to think that keeping everything inside made me strong. But now I realize that being open, being vulnerable, that's where the real strength lies." Marcus nodded. "It's been incredible to watch you grow, Lily. You've embraced the process of change, and it's inspiring to see how much you've transformed." Lily smiled, feeling a sense of gratitude for the people who had been part of her journey. "I've learned that change is never easy, but it's worth it. And the most important lesson I've learned is that we're all in this together. We don't have to go through life alone. The more we connect, the more we listen, the more we share, the more we grow." As they continued to talk, Lily realized something profound. Her journey was not just about her. It was about the connections she had made along the way, the people who had listened, who had shared their own stories, and who had helped her grow. It was about the shared experience of being human, of finding strength in vulnerability, and of embracing the fullness of life with all its highs and lows. By the time they finished lunch, Lily felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She wasn't done growing, and she never would be. But that was okay. She had embraced the process of transformation, and now she was ready to face whatever came next with open arms and an open heart. As the weeks passed, Lily continued her journey of growth, but now it felt different. She no longer viewed life through the lens of perfection or fear. She embraced the messy, beautiful, unpredictable nature of it all. Every conversation, every connection, and every moment of vulnerability was an opportunity for growth. And with each step, she found herself more at peace with who she was and more open to who she could become. Lily had learned that the true power of transformation came from the willingness to embrace life fully, to listen, to share, and to be present. And in doing so, she had found a sense of peace, a sense of purpose, and a sense of connection that would carry her through whatever came next. Life, she realized, was not about finding perfection. It was about embracing the journey, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the painful, and trusting that every step was part of the process of becoming who she was always meant to be.